Hello and welcome to the How to Thrive podcast. This podcast is hosted by me, Claire Sanders, and my sister and co-founder, Helen Silver-McMahon. Together, we are on a mission to empower individuals and teams with the human skills they need to thrive, maximising performance, minimising risk, and optimising well-being. If you'd like to find out more about how we can help your practice, please get in touch via our website, www.being-human.co.uk. I'd like to take a moment to say a huge thank you to our sponsors for the How to Thrive podcast, Flank. Flank is your in-house legal team's first AI colleague. Flank introduces AI native agents who are designed to integrate seamlessly into your existing systems, empowering legal teams like yours to work smarter. They instantly resolve commercial team requests, eliminate bottlenecks, and enable your legal team to operate at the speed the business needs. But this is just the beginning. At Flank, they firmly believe that the future isn't simply about better software. It's about building towards a future where fully autonomous AI colleagues will own entire workflows end to end, deeply embedded into your tools and systems. This is the new generation agentic engine that's redefining what's possible for in-house legal. If you'd like to find out more about Flank, have a look at getflank.ai. And if you get in touch with them, please do mention How to Thrive, so that they know that it came from one of our wonderful listeners. Is what you're describing the body psychotherapy? How does somatic coaching and help me, Shaun? I like a label.
Okay, this is what it's like.
Morning, Helen. How are you?
Morning. I'm all right. Thank you very much. All good here.
Glad to hear it. You might hear the pitter-patter of my darling dog's tiny little claws on the wooden floor. She's decided she wants to be participating in this week's podcast. So if you hear that, that's just little her. She doesn't yap like Cookie. She just does a little tiny pitter-patter of her claws. I've tried to get her out of the room, but she's not going. So there we go. So yeah, how are we doing? Busy week, busy few weeks. In fact, we should probably apologise to our regular listeners because we are a week late. We're a week late and we're really sorry. It was hot. We had a lot on and we failed to do the intro. Despite our producer being fabulous and having everything else ready to go, it was totally Helen and me. So we're very sorry for all the regular listeners. For those that didn't miss it because they're not regular enough, well, woe be you. But we're here now and we've got a fabulous podcast with delightful Shaun, which I'm very excited about. So Shaun joined us on the ethical leader retreat back in June, and to do some sessions around not only around movement but also around kind of this connection between, I suppose, mind, body, soul, three nervous systems, gut. What was it? Gut, heart, and head. They're the three nervous systems. I can't remember.
Oh, I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure the scientifically, always scientifically, but we'll go with.
I can see that Helen's scientific brain is twitching slightly. I found that really interesting though, actually, and you know, we might come on to this, but you know, this whole concept that any one of those nervous systems, she says in what's that, inverted commas, can get overloaded. So I thought that was really interesting. But it's been a fabulous few weeks. We've been super busy, which is always great. Last week we held our summer social in London for the legal beagles, which was lovely. Lots of new faces.
Really nice space.
Really lovely space, wasn't it? And we get comments quite a lot about the spaces we use. And I think I think lawyers are just pleased to be out of a dungeon. Too many events for lawyers are held in dark rooms. But it was quite funny because we purposely booked a place that had a garden so people could hang outside. But actually what turned out was it was way too hot and everyone just wanted to be inside with the aircon. So
yeah, especially us when we arrived straight off. Was it the Northern Line we'd been on? And it was absolutely roasting. So yeah, we were like, just hang out under the aircon for.
It was not a happy half an hour of my life. But yeah, it was such a brilliant evening, and just it like walking around the room and listening to conversations. There is a reason why we all get together, and it is lovely to make friends and kind of grow those relationships and nurture them. But when you see what happens as a result, you know, is phenomenal. So, you know, for example, I was overhearing one conversation where people were talking about they were putting in place a risk register, and someone would say, "Oh, I'm just at the start of that journey," and someone said, "Oh, I'm just at the end of that journey." Well, why don't I share with you the workings that I've done? And I was like, "Oh, bingo, this is the pool of
Yeah.
wisdom. This is the pool of
Yep.
wisdom. Or sitting around tables, listening to people talk about how they are implementing AI into their practice or the different products that they're looking at, which is phenomenal, because obviously the podcast is hosted by Flank and the summer social last week was hosted by LexisNexis. Both of them have these AI products, but I do think there's this feeling of just being a bit lost. So that kind of peer-to-peer, what are you doing? I don't know, what are you doing? It's all really, really valuable.
Definitely.
So yeah, that was really great to see. Really great to see.
And lots of, like you say, new faces, but also familiar faces, and really lovely to catch up and speak to people that we've kind of come to know now, and equally to welcome new people who were looking for something a bit different. And yeah, I had some lovely things about wanting something that wasn't like the usual stuffy lawyer hangout, and how very much ticked that box for them. So yeah, really lovely.
It's lovely, really awesome. And then today I've just finally, bit later to the party than I was hoping, but we finally launched How to Thrive, the flagship event for lawyers, which is really exciting, because you've launched How to Thrive flagship event for vets, which has been live for a few weeks now. Helen, shout it out. What is it? The 12th of September?
Yeah, in Birmingham. Yeah,
gorgeous venue in Birmingham. And we're holding the legal one on the 7th of October in London. Another gorgeous venue. And both of them share the same theme this year, which is listening to understand. So maybe we'll talk about that much more. Maybe we'll have a separate podcast on it. Should we do a separate podcast all about the How to Thrive?
I think we definitely should.
So that'll be really exciting. But so everything's gone live for that moment. So check out the websites being-human.co.uk and being-human.legal, and you'll find all the information about those. But another great opportunity for people to come together, learn from each other, learn from experts, and connect at the same time.
Absolutely.
Can't wait.
Absolutely.
Can't wait. So without further ado, should we get Shaun on?
Let's do it.
Listen to some Shaun? Lovely Shaun. This is Shaun Brooking. Enjoy some practical exercises in here as well. So enjoy it, and let us know what you think. As always, Helen and I will be sticking around and chewing the cud at the end of the session, end of the recorded session. So love to hear what you think. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to this week's How to Thrive episode. We've got the delightful Helen with us. How are you doing, Helen?
Very well, thank you. Hello.
And I'm very excited by this week's guest. We've got Shaun Brooking with us today, and he is a somatic and leadership performance coach, which I'm sure we'll dive into, but also, and perhaps more excitingly for me, is a trainee body psychotherapist. It took me a long time to write that down and work out how to spell it, but we will definitely dig into all about that. Shaun, welcome to How to Thrive.
Hi, and thank you for having me.
Really excited to have you here. So Shaun has been one of our facilitators on our recent ethical leader retreat, ran some fabulous workshops around movement, and have been wanting to have on the podcast really ever since we heard about you and heard about your work, but definitely now because of the ethical leader. So thank you very much for joining us for that. We always start with our guests in a bit of a kind of like looking backwards and reflecting and kind of what brought you to where you are now and what journey you've been on. I think Helen and I have certainly been on our wiggly journey. So Shaun, what brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, well, I grew up in South Africa and moved to the UK in 2008. But during that time, transitioning from my university years to the UK, I was an athlete. I was a swimmer and triathlete for many years, started at a young age. And I was studying exercise science at the time. And really, at that time, I was high functioning, I would say. Studies, sport, trying to keep the training regime in amongst the studies. But my body wasn't feeling too great. And the athletes I was working with at the time, they also didn't look and feel and sense how they were moving through their life. It looked really as if we were just keeping things going. It was a patch-up job here and there, in the lab that I was working with them. And during that time, I decided to stop training and stop the sport because university became too heavy. And basically, after I quit sport, my body started breaking down more. And then my mental health started taking a bit of a spiral downwards as well. And then in my early 20s, I fell into quite a deep depression and a physical breakdown as well. So a burnout on all levels, mental, physical, and emotional. And during that time, I was transitioning to the UK, and I realized that the world of performance wasn't about health. The story I was sold, it was more about excess drive. I grew up in the culture of harder, faster, stronger, and I couldn't stop. I felt guilty to stop. I felt that I couldn't slow down because it made me feel weak, and that was the narratives that were fed to me. And then I left the performance world. I wanted to work with athletes and I wanted to work in the performance world, but I said, well, I don't want to break things. I want to find my own healing and find stability in my body again and find stability in my mental health. And so I moved into clinical rehabilitation. And so when I moved into clinical rehabilitation, that's when things really started changing. So I didn't leave any of my strength and conditioning and performative understanding, the physiology behind all of that. I still used it, but now I wanted to change things in terms of getting people back to function or getting people back to health after chronic pain or injury. And when I worked in the clinic in a more intimate setting with the body, I started seeing different connections around how we speak to ourselves internally and how that affects our pain, how we relate at work, and how our relationships affect our bodies. And I had one client that really turned things around for me when he kept talking about his relationship with his boss. And I was a young 20-something therapist. I didn't know how to talk to people. It was basically mechanical work, therapy that we were doing to the body. And I said, well, maybe it sounds like you need to quit your job. And he kept coming in for shoulder pain. And every time I worked on his shoulder, he would leave and he would be out of pain. And then he would come back. And one day he was talking more about his boss and the relationship he had with his boss. And I could literally feel the tissue in his shoulder contracting, like he was flinching to protect himself from whatever he was imagining was happening at work. And he was literally defending. His shoulder was rising up as I was working on his shoulder. And so he eventually took my advice and quit his job. And he came back a year later. And when he did come back, he looked completely different. His face had changed. And I said, wow, you quit your job? And he's like, yes. And I said, so your shoulder pain is gone? And he said, yes. I'm like, wow, okay. So now there's something connecting in terms of how we relate to our bodies, but also what's happening in our environment. And that's when I went down the journey of somatic coaching. So still keeping a very physical element to the work. I wanted something that's going to align with somatic coaching. And at that time, I was starting to recognize how emotional patterns affected my physicality. And then when I went to gym with this emotional tension in my body, that I was then exacerbating the tension with the workouts I was doing. So I had all this pre-tension going in, layering more tension with the weights that I was doing. So it was just this tension fighting each other. And when we think about our emotional body, I now see we have an emotional body, we have a mental body, we have a physical body. Our emotional bodies need something very different to what our physical tension is. So if you think of a time where you were angry, frustrated, or sad, what do you think you need when you get into that emotional state?
I probably feel like I need to breathe and calm it, because when I get in that state, I'm like this, really rigid and really kind of tense. And actually I can feel it in my jaw. I say this, I can feel like I've been gritting my teeth, all my teeth hurt, weirdly. So it is about that relaxing and relaxing physically, I think.
Yeah.
But the muscles. Yeah.
But the muscles, yeah. And the muscles need something different. The mechanical tension, what I realized needed something more mechanical, like foam rolling or a massage, just to get the stress of the workout out of our bodies. Yeah.
And it's really interesting because we talked, didn't we, about I think, and this will let's explore somatic coaching as well, because I think we are, or especially, we're so up in our cognitive brains and like this kind of, the thinking part, but actually the messaging that goes between our physical body and our brain, and how that, what goes first. Is it the feeling of, stress in our brains that make us tense, or is it the tense in our body that make our brains interpret it as stress? It's like, it's like the chicken and egg. What goes first?
Yeah. I would say it's a combination of those elements you described. And eventually, depending on who we are and our conditioning through our life, we could sit more in one of them. Yeah. So I've had clients where the sensations in the body become too overwhelming over a long period of time. So they analyze everything from the head. And then it becomes too scary to feel when I'm anxious, scared, or feeling fear, that I don't want to drop down into that pit in my chest. Yeah. So then we get this disconnect forming. And so the gap gets wider and wider and wider. And so if we sit in our emotional centers in the brain where we're experiencing fear or sadness, it's only then connecting to our previous experiences of our history. So we get stuck in this loop of, oh, well, that's why I'm scared. That's why I'm fearful. That's why I'm scared. That's why I'm fearful. Because we only have one referencing system. But the physiology in the body might have another answer. Yeah, so we could get trapped in this emotional loop in the mind, but not connect with what's actually physically happening in the body. Yeah. I'll give you another example, because now if we're going from the bottom up process, when we experience the world, it's like our body is a filter for all of the sensations that are coming in. So light, sound, smell, it's coming in through the senses, right? So all of that information comes into the body, and then we try to make sense of it in the body, but that information then has to go up to the brain. And if we're stuck in a loop that's saying, oh yeah, I'm scared, I'm fearful, and I'm sitting at work and I have nothing to be fearful or scared of, but now the world is coming in through the body, and there's some sensations in the body that's giving us a physical reality experience of saying everything's fine, but we can't connect to that because the emotional connection is still stuck in the loop in the mind. Yeah, so now we get that mismatch. So we can't actually tap into the physical sensations that are telling us reality is actually okay.
So is that a lot of your work then, is about like almost pausing the mind to listen to the body and what the body is telling you? It goes back to taking the pause, which, and giving people that space to feel into their bodies.
It's part of taking that pause, but slowly but surely then going into the sensations in the body. Yeah, it's part of it doesn't happen fast, but what we really want to do is introduce the sensations in the body again as something safe, because we know now that 80% of our neural pathways, the ones that send the signals up to the brain, that's 80% of our neural load going up. And we only have 20% of the pathways sending information from the brain down to the body. So if we want to really get good at emotional processing, we have to integrate the body. And it's again going through the sensations and figuring out what these sensations are saying. What do they feel like in the body? So we almost create a different map and landscape of what sensations feel good again, what feel a bit scary or have a bit of an edge. And we recontextualize that, oh, it's okay. I can be in this setting and say, oh, I'm fine. Yeah. So we don't have this mismatch, and where we could be sitting in the garden. I had a client recently yesterday saying, I'm having a drink with my husband in the garden, and all of a sudden I feel panic. So what sensations are now giving this person, this body, this organism, only maybe connected to a history of where, well, when things feel nice and safe and quiet and still, that was attached to something in my history that didn't feel quite okay. So the panic comes in. So you can see the loop is now cognitive. But actually, in the real world scenario, I'm in the garden, I'm having a drink with my husband. It's actually pretty okay. So we have to reconnect that story. Maybe it started in the body. We didn't know much. I don't know much about the history of this particular client yet because we had one session, but there is a mismatch going on. So slowly the history will reveal itself. But right now there's a mismatch on what I'm feeling and experiencing and how I want to be in that moment. So we have to figure out those connections and connect the dots. But really it's about, yes, pausing and taking a moment to reestablish a connection with sensation in the body that feels safe, and I can handle things that then get overwhelming eventually.
Yeah. Because I think one of the examples you used previously that was about, is it the feeling about excitement and the feeling about like anxiety? Is it anxiety? Or like actually when you stop and think about it, it's exactly the same. Like it's the same feeling. It's just how your brain interprets the situation. Have I remembered that correctly?
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. And the story of why that feeling was anxiety provoking or more fearful, because our brains are threat detection machines. It needs to scan for safety. So if something feels quite similar to an experience that was anxiety provoking or fear provoking, we are more alert to that in the environment than something that maybe feels good because we want to survive. So we can even mismatch our, let's say, more happy, more joyful experiences that now it could feel quite similar in terms of its chemistry and its rhythm or its mechanical showing of, let's say, or let's take happiness and anxiety as a mechanical thing in the body. It could mean shoulders up, yeah, wide chest, but also that looks like fright or shock. Yeah. So there's a similar pattern there as well physically for the emotional, the feeling experience, the felt experience of it. So really we want to then reprogram again what feels good, and rightly so for the context. Yeah. So we don't get the mismatch. Yeah.
How do you do that? Like how do you begin to reprogram, years and years of experience, I suppose, and stories that really you've been telling yourself?
Well, if it's historical and it's more therapy-based, it does take time. Yeah, we really have to build a lot of resource in initial sessions, and resourcing can look like many things. We don't realize how much resource we have because maybe we're in a threatened state or living in that fight-flight mechanism, that we're only looking at survival mechanisms. But actually, we may have had resources that we found nourishing before, which may not feel nourishing right now because we're in a threatened state. Yeah. Our body can't receive something nourishing when we're fighting or defending ourselves. Yeah, it's now on defense. So that's the priority. Again, we're assessing for safety and threat. So essentially what we have to do is really unravel that threatened state, the defended state, and create some resource and safety and some containment. A client might need something that feels more containing, and it could be a bit of breath work, it could be movement, it could be touch. Yeah, it could be using a prop like a blanket and wrapping someone. I had a client that really wanted to go back to a place where it felt safe and containing, and that looked like him lying on his side, wrapped up in a blanket. And I said, well, what else makes you feel safe and comfortable here? Oh, a pillow under my shoulder. And then it led to a step of, it felt good, or it felt safe enough for me to intervene and just have my hand on his back. And then slowly that builds capacity and resource and trust that, I am okay. So when I do look at the same situation that caused me fear, caused me harm, I then actually have a bit of resource to now digest that very stressful, very overwhelming experience.
I'm taking some up for that. Is really fascinating. So like going back to like a trauma that you had, but at its extreme, and then revisiting it, but telling your body that your body is at peace, your body is at calm, that it's not a threat state. Yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it looks different for different people, but that's a simple example I could use, and in a more professional or leadership position, it's really about creating a sense of, let's say, power or strength when people find their grounding. They would need to assert themselves. They need to deal with conflict. We find a position or posture. I mean, feeling your muscles right now, we've been talking, so we're quite cognitive. We're at the mental level. But if I say, drop into your body and feel your back or feel your feet on the floor. And we just pause and feel the sensations in those areas. And then we can bring in a contextual moment of where, remember a time when you felt your back and your feet and you felt strong and powerful. So we resource something that they know. Yeah. And it could be a young moment, could be a moment that happened yesterday where they said something that they felt confident, or they felt they set a good boundary, and like, wow, that just gives your body so much energy. Yeah. And so then basically, like, we go to the gym and we say, right, now let's put in some reps. So we keep going back to that sensation, and then I bring in the negative. Well, I hate to use the word negative, but something that's stressing them out, the challenge they're faced with. I say, okay, now I'll place that concern or challenge in the room. Maybe it's an object, or write it on a whiteboard and look at it. And like, oh, I feel that sensation move. I feel it go away. Yeah. I said, well, come back into that posture. Feel your feet, feel your back. Maybe you have your back. Maybe you need some support. So I lean in with him. And then look at the problem again. Like, oh, okay, I feel it diminish less. Great. And we put in another rep. So it's like training a muscle. If you want to get a big bicep, we have to put in the reps. So we put in those somatic reps of that experience. We bring in the challenge later on, but help them find that resource point again. So a leader then has a real life skill or tool before they go into the meeting, before they have that challenging conversation. It's almost like you're putting on, I had one client say, I've just put my jacket of confidence on. And immediately they were there. They were neurologically, physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared, because we went through that simulation over and over again. And that's the power of simulation, because our nervous system is a learning system as well. So if we program that scenario back into our soma, mind, body, and nervous system, is that, when you go into that situation, you've got so much space, capacity to now deal with it, because it's almost like a battery that we've charged, that you have more capacity. And then when you experience or are confronted with that challenging situation, you then are able to have more space and more capacity and more choice. He might have not reacted or responded like he used to now that he has the capacity. Yeah. So we basically train this back into you. Yeah. Like in a systematic way. Yeah.
And is that body psychotherapy that you're explaining there, or is that the somatic? So explain, for the benefit of me and for our listeners, what somatic coaching is and why it's different to maybe more traditional coaching that people have come across.
So traditional coaching, talk coaching, might stay only at the cognitive level. So use my example of the leader I dealt with wanting to have a difficult conversation. So they might theorize about the scenario, talk about the fear, talk about the complications or the challenges, set up a structure of how to deal with the situation, or come up with sentences, or come up with a way of dealing with scenarios if things go wrong. But it's all strategized and theorized on paper. Yeah. And we can sit and think about the emotions. But where somatic coaching goes a step further is, okay, now, you're feeling fear when this happens. Okay, pause for a second. Notice where that is in your body. What does it feel like? Where is it located? Does it make you feel like you're contracting? Does it make you feel like you want to expand or run away? And then we work with those elements that come up. Yeah. Because now we're dealing with all of the layers. If we think of our body and our physiology, if we're only dealing with the conceptual, remember, we're only dealing with the top 20%. We haven't then gone into the resource of the 80, which is the felt experience, the somatic experience of the body. And I can use an example of a conceptual self-awareness versus embodied self-awareness, where conceptual understanding of things, let's say you read a self-help book, which I think we all have on this call. And you read the book, or two, yeah. We read the book, but then we don't enact some of the advice. It stays theory, but we get really good at telling other people what to do. Yeah, guilty.
Don't know what you're talking about.
No, yeah. So it stays in the conceptual areas of the brain, whereas if we bring this and those theories from the self-help book into action, we have to take something and actually practice it in reality, like it's as if it's actually happening. So we're now involving sensory and motor cortexes of the brain and involving that other 80%. So it's a whole top-down, bottom-up approach where the talk coaching, and I'm not saying talk coaching is not good. It's served purpose for many people. Talk therapy is great. Some people have great results. But there's also the flip side to that. If we want the full integration and behavior change to work, we have to integrate all of ourselves. Yeah. So that's why the somatic coaching will be different in taking in that other 80% and turning that into action, because we've been there before. It's almost as if we're training that scenario before it happens. It's the same example I would use, great examples in Navy SEAL training. They go through simulation after simulation, the close to as real experience as possible before they get to the combat zone. So when they are going through this experience where there's noise, there's distraction, they obviously stress you out. They put more stress on you to deal with in that scenario before you get to the battlefield. So all of your other mechanics, your radio, your gun control, all of that becomes automatic. And then once that's automatic, you have so much you have more capacity and space to deal with what's happening in real time. But that would never have happened if they hadn't rehearsed it, because they would have been overwhelmed if they went straight into combat.
And so does it matter if you know that it's not a live situation? Does that affect, or is it more that you're training the responses and then you've got the capacity for it to be a live situation? That's the new bit of information, but the rest of it you can respond on autopilot almost.
Yeah.
So I guess the other thing is, from a kind of thinking about it from a decision-making point of view, you're drilling in the patterns that you can then match very quickly. So you have more automatic, the behaviours that you need to do are more automatic. I'm just thinking from the veterinary and healthcare context. Obviously for cardiopulmonary resuscitations, we do a lot of simulations on, that true emergency moment where we need to leap into action and resuscitate a patient. And the benefit there is exactly the same, that you're drilling it so that actually your decisions, your behaviours become automatic. So you're kind of reducing that cognitive load at that moment so that you can really, really get it good and be highly effective.
Yeah. And that's, it happened for me recently. I was trained as a lifeguard for many years in South Africa because I was swimming a lot, and we did a lot of CPR, first responder work, and that had been conditioned into me since I was 16 years old. And recently I've had to be a first responder, and I literally saw it happen in real time. I saw the part of me that was freaking out jump to one side, and the other side just went into action mode. I had no control over my body. It just did its thing. I spoke to a client that was standing by to call the paramedics, and I'd already started with the CPR. It just all happened automatically. And that's what the power of this rehearsal and the simulation training can do in real time. If someone is talking about something that is really challenging and concerning for them with another person, it's already quite provoking for them. Yeah, because the fear is real. It's in the room. It's close enough to the real experience. But again, like the Navy SEAL training, I don't want to say I'm being a bit mean, but in that moment, we can actually create more stress for the person so it becomes more real. Yeah, we can throw in curveballs while they're practicing in front of us. Imagine a coach asking you, okay, well, I have a fear of public speaking. Okay, well, stand up and present something to me right now. How does that feel?
Yeah, oral. It's like karaoke. Go and sing some karaoke. What? Yeah.
Exactly that. You see, we can amp up the stress. We can create a situation where it's real enough that we get all of the sensory systems involved, that it's close enough. So then when you get to that moment, it then becomes an automatic thing. Like you say, Helen, we can just perform. Yes, we're going to be nervous. Yes, we're going to be fearful. But we know we've already been there somehow, and our body will be more relaxed to then do the performance at a better or higher level. Yeah.
So is there an element that when we're practicing these things, so take public speaking, for example, if you are practicing public speaking, is there an element that if we did it in an environment where we would otherwise be feeling really relaxed and really comfortable, so for example, rather than doing it in a really corporate cold hall, go and do it in a space that makes us feel happy and relaxed? So does our body then associate that speaking not with kind of being in a really aggressive environment, but actually in being relaxed and happy? And I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but is there any association with that, or is it about actually putting yourself in the real situation and just getting used to it?
Well, we would start where the person feels safe. Like I said before, we take, all right, you've voiced your challenge, you voice what you're afraid of and what's fearful for you, but I'm not going to take you straight to the cold room and to the combat zone, let's say. Yeah. First, build some resource, and that's a really important point you're making, Claire, that real learning only happens in that safe zone. So we want something to happen there first, where things are a bit safer and feeling more. It's almost creating a space where it's doable just enough. Yeah, it's not too threatening. If we go straight from A all the way to point B, it's too big a jump. So we've got to thinly slice and progressively overload ourselves to the threatening situation. Yeah, because if we do too much too soon, it just sends us back into shutdown mode or into the fear response or fight or flight. Yeah, then we're only acting from our reflexive, responsive state. Yeah.
And this, Helen, all ties into like psychological safety almost, doesn't it? It's all that. It feels like you've got to develop that safe space for you to be able to grow and perform at your best.
Yeah. And what we're saying is we're not saying everything is safe. We have to be careful about things being safe, because sometimes it's not safe. And if we're creating a safe space within us, it's so we can do powerful things. Yeah. With the somatic world and all of this world about self-regulation, it's like, oh, stay calm. And then we start saying, oh, you're stressing me out. So we push people away that are stressing me out. But it means that I have capacity to be with something that's quite stressful. That's regulation. It's not about staying calm all the time and really everything is easy breezy, because that's not life. That's not reality. Yeah, we want to be able to be in the stream of life, even though it is quite complicated and messy and chaotic sometimes. But this is stressful, but I have some internal sense of grounding and connection to myself, and I'm not doing my usual reactive thing or wanting to run away. It's really about staying connected. That's what regulation is, and being with that edge just enough that makes you feel you're safe enough to be there, not to move away from life. Yeah.
Yeah. And then being able to practice it, I suppose this is the thing, isn't it? So many people might do breath work or meditation or yoga or all of these practices in a room or in a studio that is designed for that, and they might go to a session once a week, but actually being able to pull those skills that they have learned from the studio into their daily practice, into their daily life, is kind of the where you need it most. That's the real skill.
Yeah,
I suppose
it's got to be transferred. Yeah.
One of the tips that you shared, or one of the practices we did at the recent retreat, Shaun, was this idea of scanning the environment, and it was something that I found really helpful, and I've put it into practice already, in that sometimes when you're feeling really stressed, we don't stop to kind of look around us and observe what the environment is, and you just had us sort of scan the environment and sort of look and appreciate that. And I found that so helpful. Would you mind kind of describing that to us a little bit more?
Yeah. The practice is called orienting, and it's more pushing us into a right brain activity and really drawing in more of our sensory experience. So using visual cues, light stimulation, sound, and really it's allowing us to take in our external environment and say, well, firstly, our body is wired to say, okay, is this threatening? That's on all the time to keep us safe. But then we do this intentionally. We're like, oh, well, what is that? A moment ago, I was very narrow and maybe stressed, because things get narrow when we get stressed. And then when we look up and look around and we take in other forms of stimulation that might feel good or nourishing or important to us, it really does flip the switch. We feel somewhat calmer. Maybe we get distracted by the birds, and then you think of the birds or something, a bird that you saw on holiday. It takes you somewhere else. There's a journey through image that it takes you on. And slowly that stress response calms down because we've intentionally told ourselves we are safe. It's okay to be here. It's okay to feel these things. Yeah. So yeah, orienting is a beautiful practice. Also, it's nice because it helps us. We might be experiencing strong sensations or feelings in the body, but really it does help bring in other types of stimulation, but maybe brings us more broader and to the outer rather than what we might be feeling on the inside in that moment. Yeah.
Because I guess in that moment where we're experiencing a threat response, our bandwidth is so focused on that. It just kind of, that exercise really beautifully demonstrates to me that, like, just pulling our bandwidth open again and kind of looking around and actually allowing that information to come in. I'm okay. I've got this, I'm not under threat, and sending those messages back down to kind of help. Just, yeah, it comes back to the pause, doesn't it? And the breath and stuff like that. But I love practices like that we can actually do without any kit or any, you don't need anything at that point, do you? You just need yourself and your surroundings, and we'll have that for free all of the time. So it's really easy to practice that one.
Yeah, and it's really, that's making me think of, when I was going through sports science school and the burnout that I experienced and the things that it taught me. Of course, it wasn't all bad, but it really, at that time, we're not taught these little strategies or tools of how to function with our organism. It should be part of a school program. Like, this is how we are as humans, and this is what we can do to calm ourselves down or deal with stress, or these are emotions, proper life skills. I think back to my training in exercise science. We had a short module on the nervous system, and it was only on muscles, bones, and joints and things like that the majority of the time. So yeah, the science is catching up. It's an expanding field. But really, yeah, these are basic life skills that can really help us. And it's for free. It can be done with no kit or anything.
I think the other thing that really resonated from something you said was about, and I think this, reflecting on what you were saying earlier about your journey, is like we seem to be conditioned to thinking that the best thing for our health and fitness is to go hard at the gym and almost put ourselves into a threat state all the time, because we've got to get our steps in, we've got to go running, we've got to go cycling, we've got to go to gym and lift heavy weights, and actually it was only after I'd heard you speak I was like, oh my god, we're in this perpetual threat state. Like, we're constantly getting prepared to run away from the saber-toothed tiger, and the impact, the pressure that puts on our nervous system is huge. Like, how many of us actually give ourselves permission to stop and feel our bodies and stretch and go slow and take in our surroundings? We kind of like live in this heightened stress state, and we're just feeding into that.
Yeah. We're perpetuating it. And that's why I got to my burnout, because the only thing I knew how to do things was harder, faster, stronger. It was study hard, train hard. Even when I got injured, I didn't stop and listen to the pain. I pushed through it. And it was a message that, oh, your shoulder's injured again. Oh, you've got to get stronger. Work harder in the gym. I then did my rehab, which I should have done slowly, intentfully, listened to my body. I did my rehabilitation, harder, faster, stronger. So we just again perpetuate that, and it happens in the corporate sector as well. We go in with all the stimulation, all the stress, and then because we've been conditioned to believe harder, faster, stronger, so we push that mode in our workout where we might just need, like you say, a stretch, or on the way to the gym from the office, stop and smell the flowers. Take that moment just to take it in, where you would be doing your orienting. Yeah. But again, back then, I was only taught that one thing. It was the culture of harder, faster, stronger. And then we weren't taught how to decompress after stressful events, or, be in a state of, let's say, what we call priming. When we work through our leadership coaching, we have a module on priming, acceleration, and decompression, where it's like giving your nervous system a control module, where we can actually prime ourselves for events, like a warm-up, like an athlete would. And then we have the ability to change gears to accelerate, but then we know how to come back down. None of the resourcing and recovery teaching that we had was around back then. And all we had was foam rolling or go for a massage. That's great because it hits, again, remember the physical level. It's only hitting the physical level, but we haven't calmed down the nervous system. I mean, you could be sitting still. I had one client, I'm sitting still, I'm doing my pause, but I feel like I'm going 1,000 miles an hour. So we need something else for the nervous system. And then there's emotions behind that as well. So we need to, I feel anxious, I feel scared. Okay, well, maybe you need some support, or you need to talk about why you feel scared. Yeah. So we need connection there. So the emotional level needs maybe some connection or outlet, and the nervous system needs something else. But yeah, we weren't taught with the layers of that, but we really weren't taught how to slow things down. And when we've been going so fast for so long, when we do stop, all of that stress chemistry, all of the ways of conditioning, if we just stop, think of it like going cold turkey. Again, it's too much too soon. And that's the worst thing we can do for burnout, is we actually just completely stop, because we all know that we've been working hard and we want to get to that holiday. We know the holiday is coming up next week, but when we get to the holiday, what happens? We get sick. We get a little flu, or we crash, and we've been holding on. But what happens is, because of all of the excess cortisol and adrenaline in our system, has nowhere to go. Because we've been moving it out, we've been working it out, and we've been running from place to place. And then we just sit on the beach and like, oh, I feel fluey, I feel sick. And you just, by the end of the holiday, day 6, you're recovering because all the stress chemistry has worked its way out. So we actually have to wind ourselves down slowly from working at a very long and hard, fast pace for a very long time. So there's a physiological name for it, and I didn't realize it until the time it was too late for me, but it's called detraining. Slowing an athlete down, or slowing someone that's been high performing. You have to come down from that high very slowly. Otherwise it's cold turkey moment. Yeah.
Which, again, when you relate that to the physical side of things, we go for, I'm also really bad at stretching after I've done any sort of exercise, but I know that in theory, what I should do is go for a run, do some exercise, then take a lot of time to stretch, because that if you come straight off a high intensity workout, the next day, if you haven't stretched, you're going to struggle to get out of bed without falling over, because your legs are, you're going to have, like, your muscles are going to be fatigued. But we don't seem to translate that into our cognitive brain at all, do we? We're just like, right, I'm going to think, I'm going to go really, really hard, and then I'm going to stop. And we don't kind of think about it as a muscle that also needs that decompression.
Yes.
Which seems really kind of like, why don't we think like that? Where, it's.
But it does come back to culture, doesn't it? It does come back to that always on culture, that treadmill, and maybe that conditioning of actually that's just how it has to be, or that's kind of the desirable state. Busy is good, right? How many times do we hear ourselves saying that, and actually just forget that also good is taking it slow and, listening to what we need.
And I really, like, before we hit record, Shaun, you were saying that almost the opposite as well. You were talking about some of the work that you do, and you do like micro retreats and things, and about how actually you have this gradual build up to what is a really high intensity experience. Like, it's the warm up before the event, and then you have the warm down, because the flip is that if you go too hard immediately on a really difficult subject, it can equally break people, really.
Yeah, it's another way of, the structure that I would follow. Again, it's building that resource. Think of the client I had wrapped in a blanket, feeling safe enough and comfortable enough, building strength to look at something that was very challenging or, troubling to them. Same thing with the corporate setting as well. When we take clients on a corporate retreat, is that, there's some preempting, there's some strategies in place to create before the experience that, okay, if you run into trouble, you feel things in your body in this way, this is what you can do. If you run into trouble with your breath, you feel more anxious, do this type of breath work. Don't just breathe more. Yeah. So there's all these ways of working with yourself when things get tough, but it's really in those moments leading up to the peak experience, which is the retreat, is we're building that foundation. Yeah. And even in those sessions, we're starting to decompress them slightly. So take off those layers of stress, because they've been running hard and fast for a few months or a year or whatever stage we get them. So it's really about balancing, okay, how are people judging or how are people feeling if we slow them down? Yeah, okay, they respond this way if we slow down too quickly. Maybe they need some more foundation building here. That could be movement or breath work or even just talking about it. Sometimes people need to express vocally, and that clears the mind. So that's what really those priming sessions are for, before we lead into the experience. Then the experience, you get to it, you've got tools, you've got skills, you're feeling a bit more steady, more stable, you've got some resource. Because when you go into the experience, if we think of thinking a lot or changing behaviors or moving from place to place, that requires energy. So if anyone wants to have a good experience, we need to have a bit of energy or resource in the tank. So then the experience becomes more nourishing. They get to look at things that they wanted to look at, or they get to feel things in a way that isn't too overwhelming. Yeah, they've got the capacity there. And then they have a more enjoyable experience. They're learning in a zone that's comfortable enough, but it's also challenging enough that they're stretching themselves. Yeah. So it's not just all overwhelm. Yeah. So it's a fine balance between not just all calm and easy breezy again, but having enough of that, what we could call like challenge type learning. And then once they've had those experiences and they've got insights and, wow, this happened with that, and I know I need to take pauses here, and the breath work taught me this, or even just time in nature, the simple stuff, that when they go into the follow-up integration sessions, it's like, well, how do I do this thing in real life now? How do I fit this thing into my day-to-day? And it just doesn't become a great experience I had for 1 or 2 days. Yeah. So really putting it back into the lived experience, and that is what integration is about. Again, going through physical, mental, and emotional levels.
Yeah. I think almost sometimes that's the hardest part, isn't it? We can go on these lovely, it's the perfect scenario. You're in a beautiful setting. Your only focus is on this material. You're practicing lovely food, lovely company, lovely atmosphere, and then you come out of it and you're like, well, it's so unrelatable then how you're going to fit it into your kind of everyday life. I think that's why the integration piece is so important. I mean, we do within our programs, like our teaching programs, we always incorporate, or we try to always incorporate a reflective session, almost. So when people are out of that teaching module, it's like go and reflect on it and then come back. But the integration is almost more important, I think, when you've done really embodied work in a very different setting, because you need to be able to bring it back into the real world, the everyday world.
Yeah, because all of those patterns, when you go back to your life, all of those patterns are still there, meaning the patterns that influence you, that will push you into your head again and not give you the time and space to feel in your body, or You go back into meetings that were more stressful, or meeting upon meeting, the meeting culture, then you don't have time to pause. So how do I do that in the moment? How do I hold on to that feeling? Do I have that anchor within me now to sustain in this pattern that was really pushing me out of those things I want to do for myself? Yeah. So yeah, it's all there, but we don't want to create. All right, I'm not saying that you can't have that experience of where it's great food and it's lovely people. We all need that. We all need the aromatherapy massage sometimes. I go for it sometimes too. Maybe it's just a tickle, but hey,
now. Yeah.
But that's still good. But we have to be realistic with what that is. And an experience where we start integrating is like, okay, this is where the work is now. You've had that amazing experience, and you came back with all those nuggets, those gold little nuggets that you want to now put into your life. Okay, now it's going to take a bit of work again. Yeah. But it's going to be the work that's going to sustain you for the long term. Yeah.
And so is everything that you've just described, is that the body psychotherapy? Is what you're describing the body psychotherapy? Or is that a different nuance? How does somatic coaching and help me, Shaun? I like a label. I'm a lawyer. I like a label. I like a rule. I like to know where it fits in.
Okay, this is what it's like. So the somatic coaching is really about a practical level. We don't do anything that's historical. And the somatic coaching would be like I described with that leader that was struggling with conflict or having to present in front of a tough crowd. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's very practical. So he needed it for a thing. It wasn't relating to anything historical. Yeah. Historical meaning that we are hooked by something in our past that's affecting us now in the present, which could be trauma, it could be stressful events or overwhelm that have built up over time. Yeah. This, what we call emotional debt in the body, where we haven't processed emotions. Like I could be still angry at my father with something he did back then, but that emotional cycle is still burning away. Our physiology hasn't processed it. Yeah, it actually gets stuck. So that's still burning away, and I'm trying to do life now as a 40-year-old man, but I haven't processed that. So body psychotherapy would go back to that. And what that would look like, I'll use my own example, is that growing up in South Africa, little boys don't cry, don't show your emotions. Yeah. So imagine the muscular force it takes for a young person to hold their emotions in. Think of a very sad movie you've watched recently, and to stop yourself crying, it takes a lot of force from the diaphragm, the throat, the eyes, the jaw, to keep all those tears in. That repeats itself for 30 years. Who is that emotional man now? How is he adjusting himself emotionally in relationships? Because all of those contractions and the physiology are still locked in place. This is how he sees and filters the world now. I was back then filtering the world through that emotional framework. Yeah. So I behaved in relationships a certain way. Yeah. I was very unkind to myself and my own emotions. And that's where about the mismatch I was talking about earlier, is that I was trying to work out my emotional frustrations as an athlete. And so I pushed and pushed and pushed and was so frustrated and so angry that I would physically hurt myself. Yeah. And that's what that energy drove me to do. That's what the emotional chemistry drove, because I had to burn it out. It was just burning inside me. So for many years, that was all stuck in place. And so body psychotherapy deals with all of those past holdings and hurts at a physical level and an emotional level. And when we release that out of the body, memories and story come up, and then the psychotherapy holds that. Yeah. And I saw that in the clinic when I was working, and I didn't know what that was. First, I had that client I shared with the shoulder, and he was defending himself against his boss. I would move people's joints around or massage them, and they would start crying. They would have memories of their childhood, and I didn't know what that was. So when we interact with the body in that way through touch or movement, we disrupt all that neurochemistry that was trapped somewhere, and emotions are neuropeptides. It's a fluid in us, and then we release that fluid, and so the memory comes again. Yeah, all that chemistry creates the memory and everything, and so that's what body psychotherapy is, because it's dealing with that historical material, not the practical now material.
I think it's absolutely fascinating.
It's incredible work. Yeah,
we just don't give it the time it deserves. It's wow. So Shaun, I could talk to you all day, because I always could. This is all really fascinating, and it's quite new for me as well, I think, which again I love, because it's sort of, it makes absolute sense when you stop and you think about it and you listen about it. But like everything, the world is so fast paced that you don't often allow ourselves to pause to even think about these things. So it's really interesting. We ask all of our guests for their top 3 tips for thriving. And I'm wondering what your I love asking this question because everybody's different. I mean, it can be personal, professional. What would your top 3 tips for thriving be?
Yeah, I'd throw a few personal in there, and I would say, and we've been speaking about it a lot on the podcast today, is the pausing, is actually taking the time to slow down in this fast-paced world. And slowing down can look like many different things for many different people. It could be, just taking a slow-paced walk and you're more aware of your feet on the ground, or stopping to smell the flowers if you're in nature. And the other one that I'm really practicing more of is grounding, getting my bare feet on the ground. And those go quite nicely together. If I would put in one somatic one, I would say, and go at your own pace. It's, sometimes it might be fearful or more anxiety provoking going into the body, but just notice how it is to connect with your body once a day, in any way. It could be your feet and your feet and your toes like moving around in your shoes. It's something as simple as that, or just feel your bum on the chair, or name a sensation that you're feeling in your body. And slowly your curiosity and your awareness will expand, and you might want more because something felt good, or it gave you something you didn't expect. But I would say to the listeners, go slow with that one. And really it's stay open and curious to connecting with your body in your own way. Yeah.
Fascinating. So Shaun, where can people find more about you and your work? Where's the best place to find out?
So I have the leadership consultancy, Be Fully Human, and I'm Shaun.
Great name.
Great, yeah, very good.
I knew it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah, hooray. So it's that's the best place to find me in terms of professional setting. I'm trying to build my therapy site at the moment, as I'm only a trainee, so it's going to come. But my somatic coaching website is still around, and that's shaunbrookingcoaching.co.uk. And
Shaun is SHAUN.
I was just about to say that. I'm the difficult Shaun. I'm SHAUN. Yeah, spelling that way.
No, but I think it's the Shaun that I go to, whereas the other one's like seen.
Yeah.
That's just... Helen's looking at me like I've lost the plot. It's just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Shaun. It's like really, really interesting, and is something that I want to take away and kind of just be more purposeful about, like what's going on in my body. I think it is a really important thing that we just don't give it the time and the space. So really, really interesting, really important. Thanks for joining us.
Well, great. Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening.
So Helen, that was Shaun, lovely Shaun Brooking, who's like, as I sit here and look out the window at the wind in the trees and the blue sky, and thinking, I'm orienting like good thoughts and relaxed, happy vibes. I love that conversation. Like I love all of our conversations we have with our guests, but just I feel like it's a conversation that we're so busy running around in our brains and our heads that, how often do we really think about the connection with our body and what our body's telling us?
Yeah. Just really enjoy listening to Shaun, and sort of beginning to understand, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence and the purpose of it. But it's really about that understanding yourself and then being able to regulate yourself and just working through the things that are difficult and having tools to come back to and to kind of rely on, and how that can be so helpful for everybody, I think, because we all go through stressful times, don't we? And we all have to like dig deep sometimes. And, when we teach resilience, we so often miss out on some of these really easy, simple things that we can be doing. Don't cost anything, don't take too much time. We can just do them whilst we're in those stressful situations. We can be feeling how our feet are moving or what have you in our shoes, or grounding, or looking out the window at the trees moving and stuff like that. We can be doing all of these things, and it doesn't have to be a practice. It doesn't have to feel like I've got to go to the gym for an hour and do this thing, or I've got to go to a class and do this thing. It's very something we can really lead ourselves to do.
And I love the fact that it, the reminder that it does start in our body, like that whole, it's 80% up into your brain and then 20% comes back down, and actually recognizing or regulating our body and how our body is feeling, like taking that moment to relax and to stop and to pause and to utilize all of our senses is a really important way of calming our brain. And the messages we're sent to our brain, I think is a really important lesson that I certainly don't stop and think about enough. Like, and this whole kind of, we're always on that treadmill, like, got to go for a run, got to go for a walk, got to get my 10,000 steps in today. I've got to lift heavy weights. Like I was saying, like, I never prioritize stopping anywhere. It's not a fraction. It doesn't really even appear against all that other high octane, high stress activity that we put our bodies through.
But it's interesting, isn't it? The whole thing of, I don't know, somewhere in my brain is written this whole thing of, I'm stressed, therefore I'll go to the gym. Do you know what I mean? I'll burn it off. I'll do this thing to burn it off. That's what I need to do. I need to go at it really hard. When actually, that's really counterproductive, isn't it? It's, what does my body actually need? It probably needs to rest and reset. It doesn't need to have more strain put on it.
Is that because we're a bit addicted to the endorphins? Is that what we're doing? Are we trying to chase the endorphins? Or is it also just about that actually it's about finding the balance that maybe we're like, well, do you know what? We really need to go and do something really physical, but we forget that we also need to have a rest. So
yeah.
Actually, yes, maybe we do really need to go to the gym and work it out and get the endorphins going, but we also then need to have a rest. And it's like the rest bit is the bit that's forgotten.
Yeah. Oh, but it comes back to what, when we talked to Rob Archer about the high-performing routines, that flat line, isn't it? We're always on a flat line. We don't attend to the beginning, the warm-up, or the what was it Shaun called it? The de-escalation, or he had a word for it,
yes.
Didn't he? That kind of unwinding. And then, of course, when we go on holiday and we, get on the plane and we get to our sunny spot and put out our beach towel, then, of course, we're hit with a truckload of illness because that's the first time in like however many months we've actually stopped. So
I think of it like divers, actually, as he was talking about it, like decompression.
Yeah.
Deep sea divers, they have to come up very slowly to like acclimatise, otherwise you get the bends. And you're just like, that's actually a really valuable lesson in life. Like, you can't leave anything too quickly because actually it just does yourself damage.
So I think we'll have to get Shaun back on at some point to talk about like micro practices for every day. What are the things you can do to create that in your day of that wind up so that you can get to that performance, and then that wind down at the end of the day? Because I don't know about you, but I very often finish at my desk, slap down the laptop lid and go downstairs, and then I'm making children's dinners. I'm walking the dog. I'm doing, and I'm doing, and it's only like my half an hour when I get into bed and read my book, which is kind of
Yes.
my best bit of practice that I probably do, that I actually then have that wind down from the day. But is there something I could do just after work that I could just put in there?
And maybe that is also, I mean, like, it goes back to this hybrid working or remote working, that we don't have the commute, which is great, but we don't have the commute. We don't have that natural,
the wind
enforced
down
wind down.
Yeah.
Or at least, change of gear. We don't have that, because we just go from one thing to the other. And I know from a personal reflection that is what I really struggle with. Like, last week or the week before, last week it was, I was on the whole time, from work to, there was loads of stuff going on at school, to hosting stuff for the kids. I didn't stop. And on Friday, I just pretty much fell apart.
Yeah.
And that's because I just hadn't, at no point had I allowed myself a pause. Yeah, I'd sat down, but I hadn't switched off. I hadn't allowed myself that. And it's so, I'm really aware of how deeply unhelpful it is for me. So I think it just being more mindful of it is just incredibly powerful.
Interesting episode. And I hope, looking forward to, well, I said to Shaun at the end, it's great. We're going to mine more of your wisdom more frequently. Because it's really insightful, isn't it?
It is. And it's just taking that time to stop and think. And I think I said to him actually off record, that off recording, that it's just amazing, this whole connections you make with different people, and the world has this amazing ability of serving things up. And if we can plant this knowledge, again, none of it's rocket science. We just don't take the time to stop and think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And we were talking off recording about referred pain as well, and about how this concept of, how many of us have had a pain in the hip because we have, had an injury in our shoulder. That's probably extreme, but it is that kind of like, it's not actually our hip that we've had the injury. It's a referred pain from one aspect of our body to the other. We're quite familiar with that, but how many of us have actually thought about referred pain between something that's happening in our head and the way it's manifesting in our body? Like, have we made that association? Because really, I think that's what a lot's going on.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but that was a massive realization for me recently, is that actually, I think our body has the ability to warn us and say, I'm giving you this pain because there's something you need to attend to. And actually, I'm going to keep giving you this pain until you start to listen to me. And actually, it might not be that there's anything structurally wrong with that part of your body that means that you've got that pain, but it actually might be that that's the best way your body can signal to you that it's on the edge of, breakdown or what have you. Just kind of a way of listening. And I think that's something that we don't tune into. We just, again, immediate returns. We go to the doctor and I want a prescription. I want some pills. I want some antibiotics. I want a solution. I want an operation. I want something to make the pain go away. But actually, I think more and more people that I talk to are saying that actually they've gone down that road and they've not actually had a solution to the problem, because the solution is not obvious. It's not on an MRI scan or X-ray. It's actually located somewhere different. It's located in the way that we're carrying stress, or, these things are showing up for us that we're not listening to because we don't give ourselves enough time to put those practices in place to make it possible to listen to our whole body and what we need, what we really truly need to thrive.
Another fascinating episode, I think, is where we're coming away from that. Lots of food for thought, lots of practices that we need to bear in mind. But so lovely to speak to you as always. And hope everyone enjoys it. As always, would love to know what people think. Or if there's more that you'd like, we've had quite a few guests on now. So if there's more you want to hear from a guest that we've had before about more of what they're talking about, or a refresher, then, do let us know, because we can
get them back in.
Facilitate that as well. I always feel like we just scratched the surface with a lot of guests.
I know.
There's so much more we can talk about. Yeah. So but do look up Shaun's work as well. But really fascinating. Thanks very much, Helen.
Bye.
Just before we say goodbye, I'd like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to Flank, our sponsor for the How to Thrive podcast. Without their support, it would be much, much harder for us to share the wonderful learnings from our guests. So thank you so much, Flank. And if you'd like to find out more about how they can support your legal operations, please go to getflank.ai. If you enjoyed the podcast, please check out our website at www.being-human.co.uk to find out how we can support you and your team to thrive.